We can hold two truths at once. First, some crimes by migrants are shocking and must be prosecuted without equivocation. Second, policy failure helps create conditions that make rare incidents more likely and more traumatic. This talk does both parts. And the interface between the Home Office and the NHS is a fracture line. People with traumatic histories are parked for months in hotels or ad hoc sites, unable to work, with thin primary care and thinner mental health pathways. That is not an excuse for offending. It is a preventable risk factor that we keep ignoring. Recent UK research links institutional hotel living to worse mental health, higher distress, and barriers to care. Structural harms include isolation, loss of agency, and inconsistent GP registration. These are not abstract claims, but measured effects in clinical and public health studies in 2025. Policy has begun to acknowledge this problem, at least on paper. The Home Office's asylum, mental health and well-being work streams set out pilots and toolkits, but coverage and the actual implementation are limited. A plan on a website is not a service in a city. Independent charities and mental health bodies have called for trauma-informed screening on arrival, fast GP registration and clear referral ladders on to IAPT in secondary care. The case for scaling this is not just ethical, it is preventative policing by other means. So you can ask, what would a credible fix like this look like now rather than in the next Parliament? Well, universal GP registration within 7 days of dispersal, tracked by an auditable data field that Home Office caseworkers can see, would be helpful. A single trauma triage in place that screens for PTSD, psychosis risk and self-harm, with warm handovers to local NHS teams when people arrive in this country, work permission for a short period with employer, sponsored English and well-being checks tied to induction. Work is protective. End the hotel limbo. Use small community housing and rapid decisions is cheaper, safer and better for integration. None of this lessens responsibility for crime. It does reduce avoidable harm and makes communities safer. The recent cases, the Axbridge case yesterday or the day before, the 49-year-old man who was killed and two others, including a 14-year-old boy, injured in a triple stabbing. Police arrested a 22-year-old Afghan national. The Met is not treating it as terrorism. Reports indicate the suspect arrived in 2020, had asylum granted in 2022. These facts matter because rumour runs ahead of truth. They also matter because communities deserve reassurance while due process runs. This was a hideous crime and a terrible shock. The first duty now is justice and care for the victims. The second is restraint in public commentary until the evidence is tested in court. And on the 12th of August, a case which has come up in the press this morning, a charging decision clarified this morning or yesterday. Ioan Pintaru, a 33-year-old Romanian national, stabbed an 11-year-old girl 8 times. Members of the public intervened heroically. Prosecutors have now dropped the attempted murder charge because psychiatric evidence means they cannot prove a specific intent to kill, which is a required element in law. He's admitted wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm and possession of a knife, and will be sentenced in December. This isn't leniency, it's the law's insistence on precise mens rea. And two clarifications often get lost. First, dropping an attempted murder count doesn't erase culpability. Wounding with intent to cause grievous bodily harm is a grave offence and carries substantial sentences. Second, psychiatric evidence informs the charge that can be proved. That is how the rule of law protects victims and the integrity of convictions. But you have to ask, why was this person not being cared for by the mental health systems? So what we should say to the public and what we should do for the public, we should say you're right to expect safety, swift policing and candour. You're right to be angry when systems fail, whether that is slow asylum decisions or slow access to mental health care. You're also right to expect politicians and commentators to avoid inflaming suspicion against whole communities for the acts of individuals. Here are 5 practical, measurable steps government can implement without existing budgets being squeezed to absurdity by reprioritising the spend away from hotels and litigation towards prevention and safety. First, a 90-day decision with senior case officers signing off. Cut queuing costs by deciding faster and dispersing to community housing. Hotels cost more and harm more. They harm health. They are demonstrably proven to harm health. And squalid hotels must harm health even more. Secondly, we need a national trauma triage and referral spine. We need to commission a simple 3-tier pathway that any GP can trigger with tracked outcomes. Third, we need early work permission. We need a pilot to see if this works. We need there is evidence from labour market integration that shows employment reduces isolation and improves compliance. Pair it with English classes and knife crime prevention briefings. 4, we need a police NHS joint safeguarding setup, a series of cells maybe for high-risk placements. Focus on individuals flagged with acute need or escalating behaviour using MARAC-style case conferences. And finally, we need transparent communication in live incidents, following the Axbridge model of rapid factual updates and explicit non-terror determinations when appropriate to suppress online panic. The moral argument is that justice means punishing the guilty and protecting the innocent. That includes victims of crime today and traumatised people who will be tomorrow's neighbours if we handle them carelessly. Building trauma-informed, fast and lawful systems is not indulgence, it is public safety with a human face. So here is the plain reality. The Axbridge killing was barbaric and must be prosecuted. The Leicester Square case shows the law is doing its job precisely, not softly. Meanwhile, the state needs to stop manufacturing limbo and start delivering decisions, work, housing, and mental health care that reduces risk and rebuilds trust in the community. Communities deserve nothing less. Migrants deserve nothing less. The rule of law demands nothing less.